The shattered crystal decanter lay in glittering fragments across the Italian marble floor, and Amara Nwosu stood with her back pressed against the cold penthouse window, 53 stories above Seoul. Her cheek throbbed where Jae-min's hand had connected. Her designer dress was torn at the shoulder. Her breath came in shallow, terrified gasps. But what frightened her most wasn't the man standing between her and the door, it was the absolute certainty in his voice when he stepped closer and smiled. "Go ahead," Jae-min said, straightening his cufflinks as if nothing had happened. "Call someone. Call anyone. Who exactly are you going to call?" Amara's trembling fingers found her phone in her pocket. She scrolled past emergency contacts. Past her mother's number in Lagos. Past colleagues who would never believe her. Her thumb stopped on one name. A name she hadn't called in 6 years. "My brother." Jae-min laughed, a cold, confident sound. "Your brother? The one you never talk about? The one who's never visited? The one who doesn't even exist as far as anyone in Seoul knows?" Amara pressed the call button. The phone rang once. Twice. Then a calm male voice answered. "Amara?" She couldn't speak. A sob caught in her throat. Silence stretched across the line. Then his voice changed. Not louder. Not emotional. Just terrifyingly calm. "Tell me where you are." Jae-min had no idea that the man on the other end of that call was not the powerless foreign relative he imagined. He had no idea that within 48 hours, his name would be spoken in whispers across Seoul's criminal underworld. He had no idea that the brother he dismissed as irrelevant was a man whose very presence made hardened crime bosses lower their eyes. But 6 years earlier, nobody in Seoul knew that Amara Nwosu had a brother powerful enough to make entire criminal families disappear. Before we continue, please like, share, and subscribe, and comment where you're watching from. I want to know just how far across the world this story has traveled. Amara met Jae-min Park at a corporate translation event 3 years before that terrible night. She was 25, ambitious, and building a reputation as one of Seoul's most skilled Afro-Korean cultural consultants. He was a rising executive at one of Korea's most prestigious luxury development firms, charming, attentive, and endlessly fascinated by her. He brought her mother flowers when Mama Chidinma visited from Nigeria. He learned 3 phrases in Igbo. He told Amara she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen, and for the first time since leaving Lagos, she felt like she belonged somewhere. The marriage happened quickly. Too quickly, her mother warned. But Amara was in love with the version of Jae-min he showed the world. The real version emerged slowly. First came the questions. Where had she been? Who had she spoken to? Why had that male colleague smiled at her during the conference? Then came the isolation. He suggested she work fewer events. He mentioned that her Nigerian friends seemed low class. He convinced her that her mother's phone calls were too frequent. Then came the control. He managed her money. He chose her clothing. He decided when she could leave the apartment. By the time his hand first connected with her face, Amara had already been so thoroughly diminished that she almost believed she deserved it. Almost. The night she called her brother, something inside her finally broke, but it wasn't the part of her Jae-min had been trying to destroy. It was the part that had been keeping her trapped. The apartment intercom buzzed exactly 47 minutes after Amara's call. Jae-min frowned, glancing at the security screen. A tall man in an immaculate black overcoat stood in the lobby, his face partially obscured by the camera angle. "Building security will handle this," Jae-min muttered, pressing the button. "Who is this?" "I'm here for my sister." Jae-min's frown deepened. "Your sister? There's some mistake. 53rd floor. Penthouse A." The voice was impossibly calm. "You have 90 seconds to open the door yourself, or I will have it opened for you." The line went dead. Jae-min looked at Amara, and for the first time, she saw something flicker in his eyes. Not fear, not yet. But confusion. Uncertainty. Who did you call? Amara's voice was steady despite her terror. I told you. My brother. 80 seconds later, the elevator doors opened directly into their private hallway. Kang Moo-hyuk stepped out. He was taller than Jae-min expected, 6'3", with the lean, powerful build of someone who had learned to use his body as a weapon long before he could afford the tailored black suit he now wore. His jet black hair was slicked back from a face that could have been carved from stone, sharp jawline, straight nose, dark eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. When he walked, he moved like smoke. When he stopped in the doorway, he stood so still that it felt like the air pressure in the room changed. Jae-min recovered his composure first. I don't know who you are, but you're trespassing. This is a private residence, N. I know exactly what this is. Moo-hyuk's gaze moved slowly across the room, taking in the shattered crystal, the torn fabric of Amara's dress, the redness spreading across her cheek. When his eyes returned to Jae-min, something in them had changed. I also know exactly what you are. He stepped inside. Amara moved toward him automatically, and when she reached her brother, she did something she hadn't done since she was 17 years old. She collapsed against his chest and wept. Moo-hyuk's arms came around her with a gentleness that seemed impossible given the coldness in his expression. One hand cradled the back of her head. The other pressed firmly against her spine, steadying her. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. When Amara finally pulled back, wiping her eyes, Moo-hyuk removed his overcoat and draped it around her shoulders. The movement revealed the edge of something dark beneath his collar, the beginning of a tattoo that disappeared down past his shirt. Wait outside, he said softly. Do-won is in the lobby. Amara hesitated. Moo-hyuk. I won't kill him. His voice remained perfectly calm. Not tonight. Jae-min's confident smile finally faltered. Amara walked toward the elevator, pausing only to look back at her husband one final time. There were 1,000 things she could have said. 1,000 accusations, explanations, pleas. Instead, she simply said, you should have asked me who my family was before you ever raised your hand to me. The elevator doors closed behind her. Moo-hyuk remained standing in the center of the living room, perfectly still. Jae-min forced a laugh. Listen, I don't know what she told you, but Amara has always been dramatic. We had a small disagreement, Anne. You broke 3 of the security cameras in this building last month. Moo-hyuk's voice was conversational. You bribed the doorman to lose certain visitor logs. You transferred her personal account to your name 8 months ago. You've been monitoring her phone for 18 months. Jae-min's face went pale. How do you? You also insulted a man named Kang Moo-hyuk at a business dinner 11 months ago. You called him reclusive and paranoid when your company's deal with Moo-hyuk Holdings fell through. Something cold settled in Jae-min's stomach. That's a coincidence. Kang Moo-hyuk is a businessman. He has nothing to do with. With what? Moo-hyuk tilted his head slightly. With your wife's mysterious brother who doesn't exist. With the family you told her wasn't worth mentioning. He took one step forward. Jae-min took one step back. I am Kang Moo-hyuk. The words landed like stones dropped into deep water. Chairman of Moo-hyuk Holdings. Founder of the organization your business associates call the Black Crane, when they dare speak of it at all. The color drained entirely from Jae-min's face. Everyone in Seoul's upper circles had heard whispers about the Black Crane. A shadow network that controlled information, protection, logistics, and debts across the city's criminal underground. A network whose leader no one had ever identified. A network that had made 3 powerful men disappear in the last 5 years without leaving a single trace. My sister chose to hide me from your world, Moo-hyuk continued. She believed that if no one knew she was connected to me, she could live a normal life. A peaceful life. She endured your abuse in silence rather than risk exposing herself to my enemies, or exposing you to me. He took another step forward. But you made her call me. You made her so frightened, so desperate, that she reached for the one person she spent 6 years protecting you from. Jae-min's back hit the wall. Do you understand what that means? Jae-min's voice came out as a whisper. She never said, she never told me. No. She didn't. Moo Hyuk stopped less than a foot away. Because she loved you. She believed in you. She thought you were worth hiding her family to protect. For a long moment, neither man moved. Then Moo Hyuk reached up slowly, deliberately, and unbuttoned the top of his shirt just enough to reveal the intricate black and gray dragon tattoo that began behind his left ear and coiled toward his collarbone, a mark recognized by everyone in Seoul's underworld. Consider this the only warning you will ever receive. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. The divorce will be finalized within 72 hours. You will not contest it. You will not contact her. You will not mention her name to anyone. Every asset she brought into this marriage will be returned to her, along with everything you owe her for the years you stole. He leaned closer. If you violate any of these terms, if I ever hear that you've spoken about her, approached her, or even thought about her with anything other than regret, I will dismantle everything you've built. Your company. Your family's reputation. Your freedom. Moo Hyuk straightened and rebut-toned his collar. And if you ever touch another woman the way you touched my sister, I won't send warnings. I'll send Do-won. He turned and walked toward the elevator without looking back. The news spread through Seoul's criminal networks within hours. By morning, a photograph of Moo Hyuk entering the luxury apartment building had circulated through encrypted channels. By noon, 3 crime families had held emergency meetings. By sunset, Baek Do-jin, the most ruthless criminal boss in Seoul's eastern districts, had identified the building's address. And the woman inside it. Do-won delivered the news to Moo Hyuk at the Moo Hyuk Holdings headquarters. Baek Do-jin knows about the woman, sir. Moo Hyuk stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his private office, soul spreading beneath him like a glittering circuit board. His reflection in the glass revealed nothing. What does he know? That she's connected to you. He doesn't know exactly how yet. Do-won hesitated. Boss, this is the first time I've ever seen you lose your judgment over someone. Moo Hyuk's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She's my sister. I know. Do-won moved to stand beside him. That's exactly why the situation is dangerous. Baek Do-jin has been looking for your weakness for years. He's already figured out she matters to you. If he discovers she's blood, then he becomes my problem to solve. Sir. Move her to the Gangnam residence. Full security detail. No one enters without my authorization. Do-won nodded, but didn't leave. After a moment, he spoke again. How long has it been since you spoke to her? Before tonight? Moo Hyuk's silence was its own answer. 6 years had passed since Moo Hyuk last saw his sister. The divide had formed gradually, then all at once. He had started as a legitimate businessman in his 20s, a rare success story of a Nigerian Korean child who had built a corporate empire from nothing. Their mother had been so proud. Amara had bragged about her older brother to everyone she knew. But legitimate business required protection in Seoul's competitive landscape. Protection required alliances. Alliances required compromises. By the time Moo Hyuk realized how deep he had fallen into the criminal underworld, it was too late to climb out. The night their mother discovered the truth, she flew to Seoul and confronted him in his office. You think this is protecting us? Mama Chidinma had demanded, her voice breaking. You think becoming a monster protects your sister? I'm not a monster. Then what do you call the men who disappeared last month? The ones who threatened your business partner? He couldn't answer. I raised you to be better than this, Moo Hyuk. I raised you to protect with love, not fear. She had left that night for Lagos, but not before making one final demand: keep Amara safe by keeping her distant. Let her believe her brother had simply become too busy, too successful, too different. Don't let her become a target. So Mu Hyuk had disappeared from his sister's life. He stopped calling. He missed birthdays. He invented excuses that grew more transparent with each passing year. Amara eventually stopped trying to reach him. And somewhere in that silence, she married a man who would hurt her, because she believed she had no one powerful enough to call. The confrontation happened 3 days after Amara moved into the Gangnam residence. Mu Hyuk visited every evening, bringing her favorite Nigerian dishes from a restaurant near the Han River that specialized in West African cuisine. They ate together in careful silence, neither quite knowing how to bridge 6 years of absence. On the third night, Amara set down her spoon and spoke. "You let me think you abandoned me." Mu Hyuk stopped eating. "You stopped calling. You stopped visiting. You missed Mama's 60th birthday. You missed my wedding." Her voice trembled but didn't break. "I made excuses for you for years. I told myself you were busy. Important. Too successful to remember your little sister. Amara. Then I married a man who controlled me, isolated me, and made me believe I deserved it." Her eyes glistened. "And the whole time, I kept thinking, if my brother was still in my life, this never would have happened. But he wasn't. Because he chose not to be." Mu Hyuk's expression remained carefully controlled, but something shifted in his eyes. A crack in the armor he'd worn for years. "I stayed away because I believed it would protect you." "Protect me from what?" "The brother who taught me to ride a bicycle. The brother who threatened every boy who looked at me wrong in secondary school. The brother who promised he would always be there. From this." His voice was barely above a whisper. "From everything I've become. From the enemies who would use you to hurt me." Amara stood, her chair scraping against the floor. "You decided what was best for me without ever asking me what I wanted. Because every person who gets close to me eventually becomes a target. Then you should have trusted me enough to decide whether I was willing to stay." She moved toward the window, her back to him. "You don't get to disappear for 6 years and then show up as my savior. You don't get to act like your silence was a gift I should be grateful for." The words hung in the air between them. Finally, Mu Hyuk spoke. "I don't know how to undo what I've become." His voice cracked, the first genuine emotion she'd heard from him since childhood. "But I know I failed you. And I know that every day you spent with that man is a day I should have prevented." Amara turned to face him. Her brother sat at the table with his hands clasped, his shoulders slightly bowed. For a moment, he didn't look like the terrifying crime boss Soul whispered about. He looked like her older brother, the one who used to sneak her extra dessert when their mother wasn't looking. "Then stop protecting me from a distance," she said quietly. "And start letting me decide what I'm willing to risk." Baek Do-jin's move came exactly 1 week later. The black sedan that pulled alongside Amara's car was sleek and expensive. The men who stepped out moved with professional precision. They didn't touch her, not at first. They simply delivered a message. "Tell your brother that Baek Do-jin would like to discuss a business arrangement. In person. At his earliest convenience." The implication was clear: comply, or the next conversation would be less polite. When Mu Hyuk received word of the incident, something in him went terrifyingly still. "How many men?" he asked. 3 in the sedan. 2 more watching from across the street. License plates? Already traced. They belonged to a shell company registered under one of Baek Do-jin's lieutenants. Mu Hyuk turned to the window again. When he spoke, his voice carried a quality that made even Do-won want to step back. "I want every piece of information we have on Baek Do-jin's organization. His businesses. His partners. His debts. His secrets. Sir. And I want to know exactly who in my organization has been passing him information. Do-won's eyes widened. You think there's a leak? I think Baek Do-jin found out about Amara very quickly after my visit to her husband's apartment. Too quickly. Moo Hyuk finally looked at his lieutenant. Find the source. Quietly. The war that followed wasn't fought with weapons or violence. It was fought with information. Within 48 hours, Moo Hyuk's network had compiled a comprehensive file on Baek Do-jin's organization, including evidence of tax evasion, corporate fraud, and criminal enterprises tied to several prominent Seoul businessmen. Within 72 hours, 3 of Baek Do-jin's most trusted associates had received anonymous packages containing photographs of their secret activities. Within a week, Baek Do-jin's primary financial backer had withdrawn support, citing personal concerns. But Baek Do-jin didn't retreat. He escalated. The package arrived at the Gangnam residence on a Tuesday evening. Inside was a single photograph, Amara walking through the garden that morning. Attached was a handwritten note, "Your brother's empire has a single point of failure. I wonder how much he would sacrifice to protect it." Moo Hyuk read the note 3 times. Then he made a call that would change everything. The meeting with Baek Do-jin took place at midnight in an abandoned warehouse district near Incheon. Moo Hyuk arrived alone, or appeared to. Baek Do-jin was waiting with 8 men, his silver ring catching the dim light as he smiled. The famous Kong Moo Hyuk. "I've been trying to meet you for years." Moo Hyuk stopped 10 feet away. "You threatened my sister. I sent her a photograph. A reminder that privacy is an illusion. And what did you hope to accomplish?" Baek Do-jin spread his hands. "A conversation. A partnership, perhaps. You've built something impressive, but you've also made enemies. Powerful enemies who would pay handsomely for information about the leader of the Black Crane. You're offering blackmail. I'm offering a choice." Baek Do-jin's smile widened. "Share control of your network with me, or watch your sister become collateral damage in a war you can't win." Moo Hyuk was silent for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and removed a small flash drive. "Do you know what this contains?" Baek Do-jin's smile flickered. "Enlighten me." "Evidence connecting you to the disappearance of a prosecutor's assistant 3 years ago. Evidence of your role in the collapse of Hanwon Industries. Evidence of payments to 4 police officials, 3 judges, and 1 city councilman." Moo Hyuk held up the drive. "This is a copy. There are 17 others hidden in locations you will never find." For the first time, Baek Do-jin's composure cracked. "You're bluffing. I've also identified the man inside my organization who's been feeding you information. He's currently in a room with Do-won, providing additional details about your network that even you don't know we possess." Baek Do-jin's hand moved toward his jacket. "I wouldn't." Moo Hyuk's voice remained perfectly calm. "There are 11 of my people positioned around this building. You brought 8 men. The mathematics are not in your favor." The warehouse fell silent. Finally, Baek Do-jin spoke through gritted teeth. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand something clearly." Moo Hyuk stepped closer. "I spent years building my empire because I believed power was protection. I believed that if I was feared enough, no one would dare touch the people I loved." He stopped directly in front of Baek Do-jin. "But fear isn't protection. It's a prison that trapped me as surely as it trapped my enemies. The same power that kept my sister safe from external threats also kept me away from her for 6 years." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Tonight, I'm choosing differently. I'm choosing to dismantle the parts of my empire that put her at risk, including the parts that made me vulnerable to men like you." He pressed the flash drive into Baek Do-jin's hand. "This is your evidence. All of it. There are no other copies. I'm giving it to you because I want you to understand that I no longer care about leverage or power games." Baek Do-jin stared at the drive in confusion. "Why would you?" Because my sister is more important than my empire. Moo Hyuk straightened. If you ever threaten her again, I won't use information or strategy. I won't calculate losses or consider consequences. I'll simply destroy you in whatever way causes you the most pain. He turned to leave. And Baek Do-jin. The evidence I gave you. It's all true. But it's also meaningless, because I've already sent copies to the prosecutor's office, the Ministry of Justice, and 3 international news agencies. Baek Do-jin's face went white. You have approximately 4 hours before the first arrests begin. I suggest you use that time wisely. Moo Hyuk walked out of the warehouse without looking back. Behind him, he heard Baek Do-jin screaming orders at his men as chaos erupted. The months that followed were ones of gradual healing. Jae-min Park signed divorce papers without contest, surrendering everything Amara had brought into the marriage plus significant compensation for damages. His business reputation collapsed when rumors of his behavior reached his company's international partners. He quietly relocated to a distant city, far from anyone who might remember his connection to Kang Moo Hyuk's sister. Baek Do-jin's organization crumbled within weeks. The evidence Moo Hyuk released proved too comprehensive to suppress. Arrests followed. Assets were frozen. By summer, Baek Do-jin himself was facing charges that would keep him in prison for decades. And Moo Hyuk began the long process of dismantling the Black Crane. Not all of it, some parts served legitimate purposes, protecting people who had nowhere else to turn. But the criminal enterprises, the shadow dealings, the network that had made him both powerful and feared, those he began systematically dissolving. Do-won watched with growing concern. Boss, you're giving up everything you built. No. Moo Hyuk signed another dissolution document. I'm choosing what to keep. Amara found her own path forward. She returned to her translation work, but now with the confidence of a woman who had survived something terrible and emerged stronger. She spoke at corporate events about domestic abuse awareness. She reconnected with friends Jae-min had driven away. She called her mother in Lagos every single day. And once a week, without fail, she had dinner with her brother. It was during one of these dinners, 3 months after Baek Do-jin's arrest, that Amara noticed something different about Moo Hyuk. He laughed. Not the cold, calculated smile he used in business. Not the mask he wore for the world. A real laugh, triggered by Amara's story about accidentally burning jollof rice in her new apartment kitchen. She stopped mid-sentence, staring at him. What? He asked, still smiling. I haven't heard you laugh like that since we were children. Moo Hyuk's smile faded slightly, but didn't disappear. I had forgotten what it sounded like. Amara reached across the table and took his hand. Thank you, she said quietly. For coming when I called. For staying when I pushed you away. For choosing us over everything else. He squeezed her hand gently. I spent my whole life becoming someone people were afraid to touch. I never realized that the same fear kept me away from the people I loved. And now I'm learning that protection doesn't mean distance. He met her eyes. It means being present. Even when it's hard. Even when you don't know how to fix everything. Even when the only thing you can offer is yourself. The final dinner happened 6 months later, on the anniversary of the night Amara made the phone call that changed everything. Mama Chidinma flew in from Lagos. Do-won was there, awkwardly accepting Amara's invitation despite his protests that bodyguards shouldn't attend family meals. The table was laden with both Nigerian and Korean dishes, egusi soup beside kimchi jjigae, pounded yam beside rice. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't perfect. It was home. As they ate, the conversation flowed naturally between Igbo and Korean, between memories of Lagos and stories of Seoul. Mama Chidinma told embarrassing childhood stories that made both siblings groan. Do-won revealed that he had once attempted to cook Nigerian food based on an internet recipe and had nearly burned down his apartment. And when the laughter finally faded, Amara looked around the table at the people she loved, the family she had almost lost, the brother she had almost never called, the future she had almost been too afraid to claim. She turned to Muhayak. "You finally came home," she said softly. Her brother looked at her for a long moment. The crime boss. The chairman. The man whose name had made Seoul's underworld tremble. But in that moment, he was just her older brother, the one who had taught her to ride a bicycle, threatened boys who hurt her, and loved her enough to destroy his empire when she needed him. "I was always trying to find my way back," he said. Mama Chidinma reached out and took both their hands, completing a circle that had been broken for too long. Outside the windows, Seoul glittered in the darkness, a city of secrets and power and danger. But inside this room, a family had found each other again. And that was the only empire that ever truly mattered.